This is the unexpected plot twist. After supporting Kirk through all of the scandals for years, Rasheeda's appearance with another man has shocked the internet. That's correct. Witnesses say they witnessed Rasheeda making out with an unidentified male, and Kirk's response was outrage-grabbing. Fans wonder if this is the turning point in their turbulent relationship, and they are in utter shock. Kirk was caught completely off guard by this bombshell, and let's just say that he did not take it well, according to sources close to the pair. Kirk reportedly became extremely angry, charges were made, and harsh words were exchanged. Is this the end result of his karma, or do we know nothing about Rasheeda's covert meeting? Has Rasheeda finally moved on? Admirers ask as the rumors catch on like wildfire. Will all be lost for Kirk? Most importantly, who is this mysterious man who is appending their entire world? Hold on tight, because we have every single exclusive detail, startling reactions, and behind-the-scenes drama that will leave you stunned. This narrative is only beginning, so keep watching. It was impossible to deny the tension in the air. It began as a typical day, but within hours, shocking disclosures that no one had anticipated blazed across the internet. The lady who had supported Kirk through all of the scandals, betrayals, and disputes, Rasheeda, was now embroiled in one of her own. There were only a few unverified rumors, a few grainy photos, and some mysterious social media posts when the rumors first began. When indisputable evidence of Rasheeda with another guy emerged, however, those murmurs quickly became thunderous screams. Also, it wasn't just any man. It was a man who seemed suspiciously at ease around her and who seemed to have her undivided attention, something Kirk hadn't done in years. Fans analyzed every element in a flash. The body language, the grainy images, and Rasheeda's smile at this unidentified man all combined to create a picture Kirk was never ready for. Anarchy broke out on the internet. Rasheeda was backed by some admirers who claimed that she deserved happiness after everything Kirk had done to her. Her betrayal of the guy she had battled so hard to have by her side infuriated others, who called her out. Then there were those who simply couldn't believe it, wondering whether it was true. However, the subsequent events demonstrated that this was not only another unfounded rumor. Kirk personally responded, and his response rocked the business. The news caught Kirk off guard, according to people close to the couple. He didn't know Rasheeda had been seeing someone else, and he was furious when he learned. He allegedly stormed out of a business meeting as soon as he received the call. His fists clenched, his face flushed with anger, and his temper barely controlled, according to sources. According to an insider, he didn't even wait for confirmation. He went into full meltdown mode as soon as he viewed those photos. I've never witnessed him that enraged. Things started to go south at that point. One by one, Kirk began to phone people. For Rasheeda, to those friends who share a common interest, to anybody could respond to him. Rasheeda was not responding, though. According to accounts, she actually fell mute and refused to answer Kirk's increasing rage. And that quiet only made him more angry. Kirk used social media in a mysterious yet clear manner. His Instagram story consisted of a string of irate, ambiguous posts that left followers wondering. According to one message, "Loyalty is dead. Karma always comes full circle," another person stated. However, it was the post that really ignited the internet. Imagine giving someone your whole life just for them to switch up. Fans were tagging Rasheeda, demanding answers, and trying to determine whether Kirk was actually referring to her within minutes. The drama didn't end there, either, as Kirk wasn't satisfied with merely making subtle allusions online. No, he needed answers, and he wanted them immediately. At that point, he made the decision to find Rasheeda. Rasheeda was rumored to be at a posh restaurant that evening, and according to sources, Kirk jumped into his car and drove directly there. When did he arrive there? What he witnessed only strengthened his worst suspicions. Rasheeda had company. She was seated across from the same unidentified man from the pictures, engaged in a lengthy conversation, and had no idea that Kirk was going to make his appearance in the most spectacular manner imaginable. Kirk entered the restaurant with no hesitation and immediately commanded attention. Everyone let out a gasp. Cameras started to roll and phones went up. They were aware that a disaster was imminent. Taken by surprise, Rasheeda looked up, her face unreadable. However, Kirk, his expression was unambiguous. Anger, treachery, breakup. Rasheeda, what in hell is this? Across the room, Kirk's voice roared. There was a complete silence in the diner. Evidently, not expecting Kirk to arrive, the mystery man shifted uneasily in his seat. But Rasheeda stayed oddly composed. She sat back in her chair and carefully put down her fork, keeping her gaze fixed on Kirk's. With a steady yet stern tone, she added, "Kirk, you need to calm down. Slow down." "Oh," Kirk almost chuckled in shock. "Would you like me to stop bothering you while you're out here with another man?" By this time, the strain was oppressive. The entire restaurant was observing, anticipating what would come next. Now obviously uneasy, the mysterious man attempted to defuse the situation. Kirk interrupted him with a gaze that could cut through steel. "Look, man, I don't want any trouble," he began. "This has absolutely nothing to do with you," Kirk yelled. "This is between my wife and I." At that point, Rasheeda got to his feet. She took a deep breath and carefully pushed her chair back before giving Kirk a direct gaze. "Kirk, am I your wife still?" she asked in a cool yet piercing voice. "You no longer have the right to claim me as far as I can recall." Wow! Everyone in the restaurant let out a gasp. Kirk appeared momentarily dazed, as though he had been struck in the stomach. He didn't anticipate this response. With the intention of confronting Rasheeda, calling her out, and demanding explanations, he had barged in. Instead, though, she was standing there, cool, collected, and totally unconcerned. At this point, the unidentified male also got to his feet, but Rasheeda placed a hand on his arm and told him to keep his hands off it. It was her time. She'd been waiting years to express what she finally wanted to say. "Kirk, are you curious about what this is?" she went on, adding a calm power to her voice. "I'm finally selecting who I am with this. I should have done this a long time ago." Kirk clenched his jaw. His respiration was labored. Rasheeda, however, struck the last punch before he could reply. "You believe that I am now the villain?" she snorted. "After everything that you endured for me?" In an instant, the roles were reversed. It was Kirk who was having trouble finding words, not the other way around. There was a total change in the atmosphere of the eatery. Rasheeda took the unimaginable action at that point. Pulling some cash out of her purse, she dropped it onto the table in front of Kirk. She smiled a little, knowingly, and said, "Dinner's on me." Taking the mystery man's hand, she pivoted on her heel and left the restaurant without turning around. Kirk was motionless as his world fell apart and his mind raced. He came to a realization as the cameras continued to roll, the whispers around him became louder, and the gravity of the situation finally set him. In his life, he had lost control for the first time. Kirk stood motionless, his surroundings going crazy and his mind racing. He had anticipated a conflict, expecting Rasheeda to be guilty, defensive, or at the very least, contrite. But rather than that, she had completely reversed the situation. Not only did she abandon him, but she did so as if she were in charge. As if she had been an innocent victim. It seemed as if she had already moved on. He could hear the loud whispers all around him. Customers at the restaurant continued to stare, some freely filming, others feigning not to see but clinging to every second. Every second of the fight was being shared like wildfire on social media, where the recordings were already starting to appear. Kirk sensed that his reputation was eroding right in front of his eyes. His pulse thumping in his ears, his breaths shallow, his fists clenched. This was not the intended course of events. Answers were meant to come from him. The authority was supposed to be with him. However, he stood there looking foolish as Rasheeda went away, unaffected, and the worst of all, holding the hand of another man, she had departed. A new rush of wrath swept through him as that image smoldered into his consciousness. He was unable to ignore this. He had to find out who that man was. He had to know the truth about what was actually happening. He most urgently needed to speak with Rasheeda directly. He hurried out of the restaurant without giving it much thought, disregarding the looks and the voices that continued to mutter his name. Taking his phone out, he dialed Rasheeda's number, but like before, it went straight to voicemail. He made another call. Once again, not a thing. His fist slapped on his car door as his rage boiled over. Was he actually being harmed by her? Following everything that they had experienced. After all the times she had put up with his transgressions, forgiven him, and supported him when everyone else urged her not to. Was it she who was now spotted with another man? Was it she who was leaving now? Kirk was not going to allow that to occur. He then called one of his closest insiders, who was usually up to date on everything that was going on in their social circle. At the moment his contact answered, Kirk said, "Tell me everything you know about this dude she's been with." The other person paused, and then the insider paused. "Are you certain you want to know, man?" Kirk clenched his jaw. "Otherwise, I wouldn't be phoning." Sighing, the insider said, "Now, I'm not sure how bad it is, but based on what I've heard, they have been lingering for a minute. More than once, more than twice, several times. But it's so low-key." Kirk gripped the phone more tightly. "Who is he?" Another moment of hesitancy. The insider finally revealed the shocking information. His name is Marcus. Some guy in business. He has resources and power. According to what I've heard, he has shown Rasheeda a lot of kindness. Kirk was thrown over the brink by that final statement. Very nice to her. With a dangerously low voice, Kirk repeated, "How on earth can that signify anything?" As though picking his words carefully, the insider paused once more. "Look, dude, without giving too much away, Rasheeda is different with him. More content, reduced stress. According to what I've been told, she has also been telling people that she is finally experiencing what it's like to be with a man who values her." Kirk felt as though he had just been struck in the stomach. Showing respect? As if that wasn't something she had with him. As though the years they had spent together had been in vain. His rage evolved into something more sinister and desperate. He had to speak with Rasheeda immediately in order to resolve this issue before it was too late. So he did the only thing that sprang to mind. He went directly to their home. Together, they had constructed the house. The house where their tumultuous love story had taken place, where every fight and reconciliation had taken place. He wasn't going to let everything collapse just yet. He noticed her automobile sitting outside when he pulled into the driveway. He only needed that. She had returned home. She might not like it, but he was determined to get his answers. He pushed the door open after barely knocking, his annoyance exploding. "Rasheeda, we must speak." Right now, she was seated on the couch in the living room, sipping a glass of wine, and appeared to be quite unconcerned. She took a sip and hardly looked up at him. As if his presence were the least of her worries, she said, "Kirk, without further explanation, why have you come here?" "Why have I come here?" Kirk said it again, raising his voice. "Are you serious at this moment? You just got caught with another man, and you don't believe I'll be there." Rasheeda sighed and put down her glass before turning to face him. "I have no time for this. Kirk, don't you have time?" Kirk snickered resentfully. "You have time for Marcus, but not for me. How come?" Rasheeda's demeanor changed a little at the mention of Marcus's name, but she covered it up right away. "Kirk, you don't get to question me. Not with what you've done to me. That's all." It was at that point that Kirk realized how serious this was. Nothing was being denied by Rasheeda. She had no justifications. She had no intention of lessening the punch. She had finished. Kirk noticed for the first time that she was different from the woman who had forgiven him for years. The lady who had struggled to maintain their marriage had changed. She had moved on. As he paced the room, Kirk wiped his face and tried to make sense of things. "What then? Is it this way? You're just discarding everything." Rasheeda shook her head and breathed. "Kirk, you tossed that out a while back. It has now dawned on me that I don't need to cling to something that is already damaged." Kirk wasn't prepared for how hard the comments impacted him. Rasheeda had always been there for him, he had always thought. She was determined not to go, no matter how terrible things got. Looking at her now, however, he realized that this was more than simply a quarrel. There had been more than one setback. The end was just getting started. What's the worst part? He was powerless to halt it in the slightest. As Kirk stood there, the weight of everything that had just struck him caused his chest to rise and fall. He kept thinking about Rasheeda's words. "You threw it away a long time ago. It has now dawned on me that I don't need to cling to something that is already damaged." For years, he had assumed that Rasheeda would always be there, regardless of how terrible things got or what mistakes he took. It had always been her who kept everything together. Despite his repeated attempts to dissuade her, she had always been the one to stand up for their marriage. She was no longer angry, though, based on the manner she spoke and sat. She had no intention of making him feel bad. Simply put, she had let go. With a sharp swallow, Kirk's voice became quieter. "So, that's it? Really, are you finished?" Rasheeda sighed and gave a small shake of her head. "I am at a loss for words concerning Kirk. I've been waiting a long time for things to change, for you to change. I've now come to the realization that I can't wait any longer." Even though her comments hurt, Kirk didn't believe that this was it. "Are you really expecting this Marcus guy to provide you with something superior to what we had?" His voice was filled with rage as he shot back. "Are you sure he knows you as well as I do? As much as I love you?" Rasheeda's expression, for the first time since he entered, shifted. Something flickered in her eyes, something that looked like disappointment, and her jaw stiffened. "You don't understand, do you?" she said, putting her glass down on the table and getting to her feet. "Marcus is not the issue. I'm the focus. I'm doing something for myself for the first time rather than attempting to fix you or us." Kirk stepped forward and shook his head. "What the heck? Are you going to just destroy all we've created? All that we've experienced?" Rasheeda appeared to be about to reply, but she stopped herself before she could. She simply sighed and shook her head once again. "I don't think you'll get it, Kirk." At that point, Kirk understood she would not be changing her mind. Rasheeda had already made her choice, regardless of his words or how hard he resisted. Kirk, however, was not the kind to simply concede. He wasn't going to let her go easily. "You genuinely believe that the fans won't weigh in on this?" he said, his tone becoming piercing. "After everything we've been through, you think people will just support you? Do you really believe that they won't see this for what it is?" Rasheeda chuckled a little surly. "And, Kirk, what is it? Inform me. Give me the truth about this, since you seem to think you know everything." Kirk folded his arms and spoke in a chilly tone. "You're attempting to retaliate against me. You are now receiving your compensation at last." Rasheeda's innermost feelings suddenly exploded. Her voice lifted for the first time, and her whole body shifted. "Reward? In order to receive retribution, I spent years of my life. Do you truly believe that?" Kirk remained silent. He did nothing but watch Rasheeda's annoyance flare. "Think I wanted to reach this stage? I had to leave her marriage, and you think I wanted to be that woman?" With emotion in her voice, she went on. "You don't realize how hard I battled for us? What did I give up? And you're willing to stand here and pretend that I'm the one who ruined this?" Kirk wiped his face in an attempt to maintain his composure. "No, Rasheeda, I finished." She interrupted him with a hand gesture. "I don't need your approval to go on. You don't have to provide your approval for the people I hang out with. You don't need to know why I'm finished. The fact is, Kirk, you've long since lost interest. It is now my turn to cease caring as well." Kirk was more affected by the remarks than by any slap, altercation, or betrayal they had ever experienced. Because he secretly knew she was correct. Assuming she would stay, he had committed mistake after mistake for years. He kept thinking she would pardon him. However, as he stood there staring at her, he found out too late that he had pushed her too far. Now, the one being left behind was him. With a tiny, sour laugh, he shook his head. "So, that's it? Just finished, that's all." When Rasheeda inhaled deeply, Kirk briefly believed he saw a flash of light in her eyes. Sadness, sorry, perhaps even some guilt. She did, however, nod. "Indeed, Kirk, I've finished." The room fell silent, weighty, intolerable. With his mind racing, Kirk tightened his jaw. He was unwilling to quit up. He was unwilling to part with her. There was nothing he could say to make her reconsider, but he could see it. The last bombshell was thrown by Rasheeda just when he believed the conversation couldn't get much worse. Calm but strong, she stated, "I'm going out of town for a while. I need room. I have to decide what I'm going to do next." Kirk's heart fell. "Going out of town?" She gave a nod. "Yes, I also don't want you to call. I do not wish for you to appear. You shouldn't try to convince me otherwise." Kirk felt like everything in his universe was falling apart. "Come on, Rasheeda. Don't do this." She simply offered him a melancholy smile, though. "Kirk, goodbye." And with that, she turned and left, leaving him standing there, lost, alone, and for the first time in his life, aware that the only person who had ever really supported him was gone. As his thoughts replayed Rasheeda's last words, Kirk stood motionless. "Kirk, goodbye." It had never occurred to him that she might permanently go. She had always been the one to keep things together when they got into arguments and when he made mistakes. But now, the one letting go now was she. And rage wasn't the reason. Even retaliation wasn't the reason. The reason for this was that she had finally given up on him. And he was more afraid of that than anything else. As Kirk raced back and forth, his mind racing, his hands curled into fists. He had to stop this from happening. He would not permit this to occur. This needed to be fixed. He needed to reunite with her. But how? For the first time in his life, Kirk understood that words alone would not suffice. It wouldn't be enough to apologize. Promises wouldn't be important. Rasheeda was familiar with all of it. At this point, only action could change anything. He reached for his phone and browsed through his contacts, his heart racing. He required guidance. Someone had to tell him how to make this right. His fingertips briefly touched Scrappy's number before he paused. It was not just Scrappy who was struggling. Right now, he was probably not the greatest person to contact. Rather, he selected Bambi's number. She was the one who could talk to Rasheeda the best. She answered the phone after a few rings. "Kirk." She spoke in a cautious tone. She knew already. He hurriedly added, "Bambi, I need your help," omitting the niceties. "I made a mistake. I made a huge mistake, and Rasheeda is going to leave." She stated she was finished. There came a halt. A sigh followed. "Kirk, what did you anticipate?" Her remarks hurt. He acknowledged, his voice rising, "I thought she would at least try to work this out with me. I didn't anticipate that she would discard everything because of a single error." "A single error?" Bambi laughed. "This is about more than one error, Kirk. This has to do with years of errors. She endured things that no woman should have to endure for years. It was now that she had the courage to leave. I'm willing to assist you in stopping her." Fury boiled inside Kirk as he rubbed his face. "All I have to do is speak with her, Bambi. I must help her comprehend." Though it grew softer, Bambi's voice retained a hint of sharpness. "I believe she already gets it, Kirk. The issue is that." Between them, there was silence. Kirk knew that Bambi was correct. Rasheeda had already decided on something. However, that did not imply that he was prepared to embrace it. "Just let me know where she is," he responded at last. "Please. All I need is another chance to see her." Bambi was hesitant. "If you truly love her, Kirk, you'll let her go." "I am unable to let her go," Kirk stated sharply. Not in this manner. There was yet another protracted silence. Bambi then let out a sigh. "She's finishing up at her store before she departs the town." All Kirk needed to hear was that. Without saying anything else, he snatched up his keys and hurried out the door. Kirk's heart was racing when he got to Rasheeda's boutique, pressed. When he pulled the door open, he saw her standing near the counter, chatting with one of her staff members. When he entered, her expression was unreadable as she looked up. Her voice was flat as she said, "Kirk, why have you come here?" He drew a long breath. "I had to see you. I needed to speak." Rasheeda nodded and looked at her worker, indicating inaudibly that she should give them privacy. When they were by themselves, she folded her arms. "All right. Tell them what you came to say." Kirk moved in closer. "I admit that I made a mistake, Rasheeda. I am aware that I am not worthy of another chance. I can't let you leave without standing up for us, though." She sighed. "We've talked about this 100 times, Kirk." "I understand," he said. "However, this time, I'm not requesting words. Please give me some time. Let me demonstrate my ability to be unique. That I'll be unique." Rasheeda was staring at him for a while. She shook her head then. "I don't need any proof from you, Kirk. For the simple reason that I don't think I want to be proven wrong." His heart fell. "What do you say?" She paused before saying the words that broke him to pieces. "Kirk, I guess I'm done loving you." Kirk felt as though he had been deprived of oxygen. "Are you done loving him?" Rasheeda nodded. "Yes, that is all." Kirk moved back and let out a quick exhale while nodding to himself. "All right." Despite the tightness in his voice, he remained composed in front of her. "If you'd like that." Whoa, this is really big. It was unimaginable that the story of Kirk and Rasheeda would end this way. Following years of turbulence, betrayals, and second chances, it appears that Rasheeda has finally and permanently cut ties with Kirk. Is this, however, the end? Or does Kirk still have a chance to win her heart again? Don't hold back. We know you all have opinions about this. Is Rasheeda's decision to move on the right one, in your opinion, or ought she to give Kirk one final chance? We're reading all of your comments, so please share your opinions. Additionally, as you are fully aware, the drama never ends, so if you would want to see more updates on this chaotic situation, be sure to hit the want button. And what are you waiting for if you haven't signed up yet? Press this SUBSCRIB button to enable notifications so you don't miss any updates. You won't want to miss what's coming next, we promise.